I'm old enough to remember when Mario Cristobal couldn't put together a staff at Miami. That's how old I am. That feels like a long time ago now, doesn't it? In reality, it's only a few weeks ago. But boy, things sure have changed down in Coral Gables. I interrupt that foolishness to break this news for you. Mario Cristobal may have the best staff in the ACC right now. Hold on. Hold on. I know a lot of you are pushing back. I know they hadn't coached a game yet. I get all that. And so for the sake of avoiding a very unnecessary debate, let's just safely call this one of the best staffs in the SEC or ACC. I put a poll out there a little while ago. It's not a poll. It was actually a statement. And I asked you guys, it's on Twitter right now. I only did this like an hour ago. I simply asked you, who has the best staff in the ACC? Now, some of you who wanted to overthink the room started talking basketball and promptly got blocked. I'll unblock you tomorrow. But there's no room for basketball when this sport has no offseason. Juwan Howard, though, Pate State material. Yeesh. Anyway, back to the sport at hand. I asked you guys, who has the best coaching staff in the ACC right now? Vast majority of you said Miami. Now look, I got a lot of respect for Wake Forest and the staff they have. I think very highly of North Carolina's staff. Dabo at Clemson is always going to have a good staff. There's a lot of unknown about that staff right now. But look, there is no staff out there, I think this is safe to say, that is definitively better than the collection that Mario Cristobal has put together. So here's what's happening. And then I'm going to tell you why it is very, very important, not just for Miami fans, but for all of America, for all of the college football public. You know this has been a focal point on this show for a while. And there's that beautiful Miami B-roll. Really, I cover Miami just so we can look at the B-roll of the fans and the city. So look, I first want to show you who he's hired. Here is the current Miami coaching staff, and I think we've got it on graphic. And so I want you to look at this list of names now. You got Josh Gaddis as the offensive coordinator. Kevin Steele now is the defensive coordinator. He's got Kevin Smith there, running backs. They just brought in Jamel Adai, to coach DBs from Georgia. Frank Ponce is the passing game coordinator. Charlie Strong recently hired as linebackers coach. Aaron Feld came all the way from Oregon. He used to be on the Georgia staff. He's strength and conditioning. So look, a lot of these names you recognize, maybe some you don't. Here's what Mario Cristobal's done with this staff. First thing he did is he went and got a whole bunch of guys who have coached under Nick Saban. Now that's important for two reasons as it pertains to this Miami staff. Number one, it's because obviously you want folks who have seen that process play out firsthand up close. But here's the second thing. They appreciate the grind and they're not scared away by it. Mario Cristobal's probably had some guys on his staff in his first few years as a head coach at FAU and then at Oregon that were turned off a little bit by what that grind entails. You don't have to worry about that, because if you've ever worked for Nick Saban, then that's irrelevant. Guys just assume that's part of the job. So guys embracing that grind, he's not going to have to worry about that with this crew. And most of these guys have been around the block, but there's also a healthy collection of youth and experience in this crew. But first and foremost, these are recruiters. These are guys that know how to go get the groceries. Meemaw used to say all the time, you cannot cook a five-star meal with an empty fridge. Mario Cristobal knows that. And so now this is setting up to where it would very much surprise me if Miami didn't have the best talent roster in the conference by 2024. What they do with that is its own discussion. But Miami is about to recruit at a top 5 level every cycle. Of that, I'm virtually certain. But then I want to ask you this. When's the last time you watched any staff get put together in the ACC and it made you go, whoa? It normally happens in the SEC. Lincoln Riley may do it, when Steve Sarkisian gets to Texas, some of those big programs, they may do it. That hadn't been happening in the ACC. It's happening right now, though, in South Florida. And I also want you to remember the status quo has changed. See, Mario Cristobal just spent about half a decade out on the West Coast, in the Pacific Northwest, no less, proving to you that he is elite at convincing guys to leave home. Now, he's put together a staff of all-world recruiters, and their task is simply to convince kids to stay home. Judging by my own history, it's a lot easier to convince folks to stay home than it is to leave home. But I mentioned the college football public, and I mentioned America, and how this is important for everyone. And you may be sitting in Lincoln tonight thinking, what in the world does this have to do with Nebraska football? Or Tennessee or anywhere else. What does this have to do with us? Good for them. Or maybe you doubt them, but it's irrelevant. That's Miami. This is my program. We led the show tonight talking about the playoff, right? And everyone has told you and given you their theories on what it's going to take to have parity and competitive balance in college football, and 95% of it is it's fool's gold at best, and it's totally ignorant at worst. But this actually has substance to it. If you ever change the recruiting dynamic in South Florida, and you can ever not shut it off, but just limit the ability of Georgia and Ohio State and Clemson and Alabama to come into South Florida and out-recruit in-state programs for the top talent in South Florida, think about the reset button in many ways that hits on college football. Because if you watch Georgia versus Bama, or you watch Bama versus Clemson, or Bama versus Ohio State, there was a national championship Alabama won. I think it was against Ohio State. The entire secondary was from South Florida. Like, how insane is that? That's got to stop. That's what you got to stop. If you want competitive balance, let Nick Saban take a few less 5 stars per cycle from South Florida. Maybe he gets them from somewhere else. Maybe he's already got enough embarrassment of riches where it doesn't impact him. It's not going to help him anymore. It's certainly not going to help Clemson or help Georgia that they've got 1 or 2 less elite kids per cycle that they can take. This is not just a solo job. Miami needs some help in achieving this for the overall balance of college football. Billy Napier, I've got a lot of hope in what they're doing with their staff. I'm still very much in the remains to be seen camp with Florida State. But Miami is chief among this group because Miami is the program in South Florida. Miami is the program that, when they've been at their best, have established the blueprint of owning South Florida. They've done it before. There's no reason they can't do it again. It's just that they had to step up to the plate. Miami finally stepped up to the plate. But this baseball season just started. They stepped up to the plate, man. No one ever gets a hit if they're not in the batter's box. Miami finally stepped into the batter's box, and now, look, folks are going to bring heat. That's not going to change. Clemson's not going to stop trying. Just as Nick Saban and Ryan Day and Kirby Smart, they're not going to stop coming into South Florida. It's just that they're finally going to get some pushback. They're finally going to know, I guarantee you for a while, unless they really did their homework, I guarantee you Kirby and Ryan Day and Dabo Swinney and Nick Saban, they probably didn't even have the ability to name Miami's entire staff, because that's how irrelevant Miami had become recruiting against the big boys when they came into South Florida. That day's over. This is a totally new day. So they're still going to win their fair share down there. Miami's going to win their fair share too. But at the very least, you take notice now. And if you are an agnostic fan, if you're an Arizona fan or you're a Colorado fan and you're just tired of seeing the same programs dominate, don't let folks tell you an expanded playoff's going to change that, because it's not. I hate to be the bearer of bad news. It's not. But I'll tell you what could fundamentally change it. If recruiting in Florida changed, that could fundamentally change it. And then I'll do you one better. What if Mario Cristobal and his staff take a huge chunk of the in-state talent in South Florida, and Lincoln Riley starts owning Southern California, and Jimbo and Steve Sarkisian lock down Texas more so than it has been in the past? What would that do? Because there's reason, if you think about every program I just listed, there is reason at least to believe the recruiting dynamics in Southern California, Texas, and South Florida are all well on the path to changing to some degree over the next few years. If you see a change in the overall power structure, and if you see a change in the competitive balance, and you want to know, how are these upsets happening? Or how is there no 2 or 3 groups of teams that have separated themselves in the pack? Check out the rosters and see how many less FLAs you see next to those starting defensive backs and wide receivers and everybody. I mean, Alex Leatherwood was from down there. They got every position at IMG Academy alone, much less South Florida. So keep an eye on this. This is important. Unlike some of the stuff they tell you is important, that's actually important.